I unlocked my phone and my heart dropped into my stomach. There on the screen was a message to CEO Marcel Cross that I definitely hadn't sent. Daddy misses you. Come home soon. I love you. My eyes darted to my 3-year-old son Toby, who was playing innocently on the floor with his toy car, making little vroom vroom sounds. My breath caught in my throat when Marcel's reply appeared almost immediately. Who is this? Panic seized me completely. Marcel Cross wasn't just any CEO. He was the company's most feared, calculated, and utterly unreachable executive. Our only connection was professional. I was his executive assistant, and in the 18 months I'd worked for him, he'd never once acknowledged me beyond work-related matters. My fingers trembled as I typed out a response. Sorry, sir. My son accidentally sent that, please ignore. I hit send, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. But the reply that came back wasn't what I expected at all. Bring your phone to my office. First thing tomorrow morning. I stared at those words for a full minute, feeling my career crumbling around me. This was it. I was going to get fired for inappropriate conduct, for crossing some invisible professional boundary. I'd be jobless, unable to support Toby, forced to move back to my parents' house in shame. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay awake replaying every possible scenario, each one ending with me packing up my desk in humiliation. The next morning arrived too quickly. I dropped Toby off at daycare, gave him an extra long hug and drove to the office, feeling like I was heading toward my own execution. My colleagues greeted me normally, completely unaware that my world was about to implode. I went through the motions of making coffee, organizing files, responding to emails, but my mind was elsewhere, trapped in a loop of anxiety and dread. At exactly 9 o'clock, I noticed something unusual. Marcel was standing in the reception area. He never came to reception, ever. His presence there was so unexpected that the receptionist looked genuinely startled. His arms were crossed over his chest, and those sharp gray eyes were fixed directly on me. Even from across the room, I could feel the intensity of his gaze cutting through everything else. Rex. He said my name so casually, as if we'd known each other for years instead of maintaining strict professional distance. My office. Now. My heart rate accelerated instantly. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading. I followed him down the corridor, each step feeling heavier than the last. Other employees glanced our way, curiosity evident in their expressions. Marcel's office was on the top floor, all glass and steel and intimidating minimalism. The moment we entered, he closed the door behind us and pulled the blinds down over the interior windows. The room suddenly felt incredibly small. He moved closer to me, closing the distance until he was standing uncomfortably near. I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Tell me about your son, he said, and his voice was surprisingly soft, almost vulnerable. This wasn't the Marcel who terrified people in boardroom meetings. This was someone else entirely. He's 3 years old. His name is Toby, I managed to say, trying desperately to maintain some semblance of professionalism even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. Marcel looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Something gentle, something that looked almost like longing. He stayed silent for several long seconds, and I watched him carefully, trying to read what was happening behind those calculating eyes. Does he have a father? The question came out quietly, carefully. My heart sank. No, sir. It's just me and him. It's always been just the two of us. He remained quiet, processing this information. Then he spoke again, even more slowly this time. I see. I braced myself for the lecture, for the professional boundary speech, for the termination notice, but what came out of his mouth next shocked me completely. Bring him to the office tomorrow. I want to meet him. I stared at him in disbelief. Sir, I really don't think that's appropriate. I'm not asking, Rex. I'm telling you. There was something in his voice that made it impossible to argue. Some quality that suggested this wasn't just a whim but something important to him. Bring Toby tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I opened my mouth to protest again, to explain all the reasons why this was a terrible idea, but he held up one hand to stop me. That's all for now. You can go back to your desk. He turned away from me, effectively dismissing me, but I caught something in his profile, a tightness around his eyes, that suggested he was feeling something deeper than he was letting on. I left his office in a daze, completely confused about what had just happened. Instead of getting fired, I'd been given a strange request that made absolutely no sense. Why would Marcel Cross, billionaire CEO who barely acknowledged his employees' existence, want to meet my 3-year-old son? It defied all logic. Back at my desk, I couldn't concentrate on anything. My mind kept replaying the conversation, analyzing every word, every pause, every subtle shift in his expression. My coworker Jennifer stopped by with coffee and noticed my distracted state. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just a weird morning," I muttered, not wanting to explain the bizarre situation I'd found myself in. That evening, after picking up Toby from daycare, I sat on our apartment floor watching him play. He was building something elaborate with his blocks, talking to himself in that adorable way toddlers do, completely oblivious to how much his innocent action had turned my world upside down. How could I have been angry at him? He was just a baby who'd picked up my phone, seen the keyboard and typed random words to a random contact. But they weren't random words. They were words that struck at something deep, words about missing someone, about wanting someone to come home, about love. Had Toby sensed something I'd been feeling without realizing it? The loneliness that came with single parenthood, the exhaustion of doing everything alone, the secret wish that someone would walk through that door and make everything easier. I pushed those thoughts away. Tomorrow I would take Toby to meet Marcel Cross. Let them have their strange encounter and hopefully everything would go back to normal. Hopefully this would all blow over and become just another weird story to tell someday. But deep down, some part of me knew that nothing was going back to normal. Something had shifted, some invisible line had been crossed, and whatever happened next was going to change everything. I'd never imagined bringing Toby to my workplace. The corporate environment seemed like the worst possible place for an energetic 3-year-old. But Marcel had given me a direct order, and I'd learned long ago that arguing with him was pointless. So there I was, holding Toby's small hand as we walked through the gleaming lobby of Cross Enterprises. Toby wore his favorite blue backpack, the one with cartoon dinosaurs, and his eyes were wide with wonder. "Daddy, everything's so shiny," he exclaimed, his voice echoing slightly in the marble-floored entrance. Several employees turned to look at us, and I felt their curious stares like physical weights. Whispers started immediately. I caught fragments. "That's Rex from Executive Relations. Didn't know he had a kid. Wonder what he's doing here." My face burned with embarrassment, but Toby remained completely oblivious to the attention. He was too busy taking in his surroundings, pointing at the enormous chandelier hanging from the ceiling, asking questions about the security guards and their uniforms, commenting on how tall everything was. We took the elevator to the top floor. Toby bounced excitedly, watching the numbers climb. "Are we going to see the big boss?" he asked innocently. "Yes, buddy. Remember to be on your best behavior, okay?" "I'm always good, Daddy," he protested, which made me smile despite my nervousness. Marcel's assistant looked surprised to see us but waved us through immediately. The door to his office was already open. Marcel stood by the window, backlit by morning sun streaming through the glass. When he turned around and saw Toby, something remarkable happened. His entire expression transformed. The cold, intimidating CEO completely disappeared. In his place stood a man who looked almost gentle. "Big tall man," Toby chirped immediately, with that fearless enthusiasm only children possess. My cheeks flushed hot with embarrassment. But Marcel did something I'd never seen him do in all my time working here. He smiled. Not a professional smile, not a polite smile, but a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes and softened his entire face. He lowered himself down to Toby's level, not caring that his expensive tailored suit was touching the floor. "Hey there, buddy. I'm Marcel. What's your name?" "I'm Toby," my son announced proudly, as if his name was the most important thing in the world. Then, without any hesitation, he pulled his toy car from his pocket and held it out. "Do you want to play with me?" Marcel took the small plastic car as if it were something precious. He actually got down on his knees and started rolling it across the floor, making engine noises that sounded surprisingly authentic. "Vroom, vroom," he said seriously, treating this like the most important business meeting he'd ever attended. I stood there completely speechless. This was the same man who'd made a senior vice president cry during a budget review last month. The same man who'd fired 3 people in one day without blinking. The same man who reportedly never socialized with anyone and maintained strict emotional distance from his entire staff. Toby settled into conversation with Marcel as if they'd known each other forever. "You're really nice. Most grown-ups don't want to play," he said with heartbreaking honesty. Marcel's expression softened even more. "Well, thank you, Toby. You're pretty cool yourself." For the next 15 minutes, I watched in amazement as Marcel gave Toby his complete attention. He didn't glance at his computer, didn't check his phone, didn't seem aware that the rest of the world existed. It was just him and my son, playing with a toy car on the floor of a corner office worth millions. Eventually, Marcel picked Toby up and settled him on his lap. "Does he go to daycare?" he asked me, the first time he'd acknowledged my presence since we'd arrived. "Yes, sir. But sometimes I have to bring him here when the daycare closes early. Or if he's sick and I can't find a sitter." I tried to keep my voice steady and professional. Marcel's face grew serious. "That's not efficient for you. You shouldn't have to constantly worry about childcare logistics." I felt defensive. "Sir, it's fine. I manage." "You shouldn't have to just manage, Rex." He looked directly at me and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. "I'll arrange something better. Private care with flexible hours. Consider it done." "Sir, that's really not necessary. I can't accept." "I decide what's necessary, Rex. And I've decided." His voice carried absolute authority, but his eyes held something else. Something protective, almost possessive. He glanced down at Toby, who was now playing with Marcel's expensive watch. "Besides, he deserves the best, and so do you." The way he said it made something flutter in my chest. This wasn't just about professional courtesy. This was personal. Deeply personal. After a while, Marcel's assistant brought in juice and cookies for Toby. My son's eyes lit up. "Chocolate chip. My favorite." He looked at Marcel with pure adoration. "You're the best." Marcel's smile could have melted glaciers. "I'm glad you think so, Toby." As the morning progressed, I found myself relaxing slightly. Marcel asked Toby about his favorite cartoons, his favorite foods, what he liked to do at the park. He listened to every rambling answer with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions, laughing at Toby's jokes. Watching them together created a strange ache in my chest, something that felt like hope and fear mixed together. Eventually, Toby started yawning. "Daddy, I'm sleepy. We should go," I said quickly. "I've already taken up too much of your time, sir." Marcel stood, still holding Toby. "Actually, there's a couch in my private lounge. He can nap there while we discuss some work matters." Before I could protest, he carried Toby into an adjoining room I'd never seen before. He laid my son down gently on a leather couch, removed his shoes carefully, and covered him with a cashmere throw blanket that probably cost more than my car. When Marcel returned, closing the door softly behind him, we were alone for the first time since yesterday. The atmosphere immediately changed, becoming charged with something I couldn't quite name. "Why are you doing all this?" I asked quietly. "This isn't normal. Bosses don't meet their assistants' children. They don't arrange private child care. They don't." "Because I know what it's like to be alone, Rex." His voice was low, raw with emotion I'd never heard from him before. "And I don't want Toby to ever feel that way." The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken things. "My parents died when I was 4, Marcel continued, not looking at me. "I was raised by nannies in boarding schools. No one ever played with me. No one ever asked about my favorite cartoons or made me chocolate chip cookies. I grew up knowing I was alone." He finally met my eyes. "Toby won't know that feeling. Not if I can help it." Friday evening arrived faster than I expected. The week had passed in a strange blur of normalcy mixed with confusion. Marcel hadn't mentioned our conversation again, but I'd caught him watching me several times throughout the week with an expression I couldn't decipher. Now, as I gathered my things to leave, he suddenly appeared beside my desk. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up to reveal surprisingly strong forearms. He looked more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. "Rex, wait a moment." My heart performed an involuntary flip. "Yes, sir." "Dinner. Tonight. My place. Both of you." He said it so casually, as if inviting employees and their children to his private residence was something he did regularly. Sir, I really don't think. Toby likes Italian food, doesn't he? Marcel looked directly at me, completely ignoring my attempt at refusal. I have a private chef who makes exceptional carbonara, and there's homemade gelato for dessert. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was the daycare. I answered quickly. Hello, Mr. Rex. Toby's asking if he can see Marcel again. He's been talking about him all week. The teacher's voice sounded amused. Should I tell him another time? Marcel was close enough to hear. He plucked the phone from my hand smoothly. This is Marcel Cross. Tell Toby we're having dinner tonight. Italian food and gelato. See you in 30 minutes. He ended the call and handed my phone back. You can't just, I started. I already did. That devastating smirk appeared on his face. We'll take my car. You can drive yours home tomorrow. I was completely trapped. Within minutes, I found myself sitting in Marcel's Mercedes, a car so expensive I was afraid to breathe on the leather seats, heading toward what I assumed was his home. Toby sat in a car seat that Marcel apparently kept in his vehicle now, chattering excitedly about gelato and seeing his new friend. Marcel's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a luxury building downtown. When the private elevator doors opened directly into his living space, I felt my jaw drop. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city's skyline. The interior was all clean lines and expensive taste. But what shocked me most was the corner that had been completely transformed. A toy corner, complete with building blocks, stuffed animals, a miniature kitchen set, toy cars, books, and even a small tent. Everything was new, high quality, carefully arranged. You did all this? I asked, unable to hide my disbelief. When, Tuesday afternoon, made a few calls. Marcel shrugged as if setting up an entire play area in his minimalist bachelor pad was no big deal. I wanted Toby to feel comfortable here. Toby let out a squeal of pure joy and immediately dove into the toys. I stood frozen, watching my son play in a billionaire's penthouse, feeling like I'd stumbled into some alternate reality. Come on, Marcel said softly, touching my elbow. Chef prepared everything fresh. Let's eat while it's hot. The dining area overlooked the city. The table was set beautifully but not ostentatiously. Simple elegance. A chef I didn't see had prepared a 3-course meal that looked like something from a Michelin-starred restaurant. The carbonara was perfect. The salad crisp and fresh, the bread still warm. You really didn't have to do all this, I said quietly, feeling overwhelmed by everything. The setting, the gesture, the implications. Marcel set down his wine glass and looked at me with unsettling intensity. I wanted to, Rex. I don't do things I don't want to do. Ever. Silence settled between us, comfortable but charged with tension. I could hear Toby in the background making sound effects for whatever game he was playing. Why? I finally gathered the courage to ask. Why are you being so kind? This isn't normal boss behavior. You don't even socialize with your executive team, but you're having dinner with your assistant and his 3-year-old? Marcel's jaw tightened slightly. He took a long moment before responding. Because I know what loneliness looks like, Rex. And I recognize it. You're doing everything alone, working full-time, raising a child, managing every crisis by yourself. I see you staying late, coming in early, never complaining. I see the exhaustion you try to hide. He paused. And I see Toby, a good kid who deserves more than whatever you can manage on your own. I'm doing my best, I said defensively. I know you are. Your best is remarkable. His voice softened. But you shouldn't have to do it alone. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Toby played for another hour, occasionally running over to show us his creations or ask Marcel to play. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with him. He climbed onto the couch next to Marcel and fell asleep mid-sentence, his small head resting against Marcel's arm. I stood to carry him home, but Marcel caught my wrist gently. The touch sent electricity through my entire body. Let him sleep. Stay a while. Please. His voice held a vulnerability I'd never heard before. I remained standing, acutely aware of his fingers still wrapped around my wrist. His grip soft but firm, warm against my skin. Marcel, I used his first name for the first time, testing how it felt on my tongue. He stood slowly, moving closer until I could smell his cologne again, that intoxicating woody scent that seemed to wrap around me.
You know something's happening here, don't you, Rex?
His voice had dropped to a husky whisper that made my pulse race. My heart pounded against my rib cage. I don't understand what you mean. Yes, you do. He lifted one hand to my face, his thumb brushing across my cheek slowly, deliberately, tracing along my jawline. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is inappropriate. Tell me you don't feel it too. I couldn't form words. My brain had stopped functioning properly. All I could focus on was his touch, his proximity, the way his eyes had darkened with something that looked like desire. Finally, words tumbled out. Don't stop. Marcel kissed me then, slow and consuming and absolutely world-ending. His lips moved against mine with practiced confidence, one hand cupping my face while the other found my waist. I melted into him, all my riddance dissolving. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing hard. Stay tonight, he whispered. Both of you. I have guest rooms. Just don't leave yet. I should have said no. I should have grabbed Toby and run. But instead I heard myself whisper back, okay. His smile was beautiful and terrifying all at once. Good, because I'm not letting either of you go. I woke up in Marcel's guest room to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The bed was absurdly comfortable, the sheets so soft they felt like silk against my skin. Toby was still asleep beside me, curled up like a little comma, his breathing steady and peaceful. For a moment I just watched him, marveling at how innocent he looked, completely unaware of how complicated our lives had become. The smell of cooking drew me out of bed. I padded down the hallway in yesterday's clothes, feeling rumpled and out of place in Marcel's pristine penthouse. When I reached the kitchen, I stopped dead in my tracks. Marcel Cross, billionaire CEO, corporate titan, the man who terrified executives twice his age, was standing at the stove flipping pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. You cook? The words came out before I could stop them, disbelief coloring my tone. He glanced over his shoulder, a small smile playing at his lips. Only when it matters. His voice was casual, but his eyes held weight. And this matters. Before I could process that statement, I heard small footsteps behind me. Marcel! Toby's delighted shriek filled the space as he ran past me, still in his pajamas, straight toward the stove. Marcel turned off the burner immediately and scooped Toby up in one smooth motion, settling him on the counter like it was the most natural thing in the world. Morning, buddy. Want to help me finish breakfast? Yes. Toby bounced excitedly as Marcel handed him a small bowl of chocolate chips. Sprinkle these on top. Not too many, or your dad will say I'm a bad influence. Watching them together made my chest feel tight with emotions I couldn't name. This was dangerous territory. I was getting attached. Toby was getting attached. And attachment led to expectations, which led to disappointment when things inevitably fell apart. But I couldn't make myself look away. By Monday morning, everything had shifted at the office. People noticed things. Marcel had started mentioning Toby casually in meetings. Rex might need to leave early for his son's daycare pickup. Or let's schedule this around Rex's family commitments. He'd given me early leave twice last week without explanation. And on Thursday, we'd had lunch together in his private dining room, just the two of us. Door closed, an hour that had nothing to do with work. The rumors spread like wildfire. I first heard them in the break room on Tuesday afternoon. I'd gone to refill my coffee when I heard voices from around the corner. Two women from accounting speaking in those loud whispers that people use when they want to be overheard. Rex is definitely sleeping with him. How else did he suddenly get that promotion? I heard he brings his kid around now. Like actually to the office. Poor child. Being used like that as some kind of sympathy card. Marcel Cross doesn't do relationships. Everyone knows that. Rex is delusional if he thinks this will last more than a few weeks. Each whisper felt like a small cut stinging beneath my skin. I stood frozen, coffee pot in hand, unable to move forward or retreat. Honestly, it's kind of pathetic. Using your own kid to manipulate your way up the corporate ladder. I set the coffee pot down with shaking hands and left without my drink. That evening, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Marcel had asked me to stay late to review some contracts, but my mind was elsewhere. Finally, I put down my pen and looked at him directly. People are talking, Marcel. About us. He didn't even glance up from his laptop. Let them talk. They think I'm using you. My voice came out sharper than intended. They think I'm sleeping with you for promotions and special treatment. Are you? He still hadn't looked at me. What? No. Of course not. Then what they think is irrelevant. He continued typing, completely unbothered. But I do care. I snapped, frustration boiling over. I don't want people thinking I'm some opportunist who slept his way to the top. And I definitely don't want them thinking Toby is just some pawn I'm using to manipulate you into whatever this is. That got his attention. Marcel closed his laptop with deliberate slowness and stood up. His presence was immediately intimidating as he walked around his desk toward me. Listen to me very carefully, Rex. His voice was low, controlled. Anyone who thinks you're using me can pack their belongings and find employment elsewhere. You've earned every single thing you have here through your own talent and dedication. Nobody handed you anything. He paused, and something in his expression softened. And Toby? He's not a pawn. He's not a tool. He's a 3-year-old child who deserves everything good in this world. And he's the best thing that's happened to me in years. So no, I absolutely don't care what anyone says about us. His sincerity cut through my anger like a knife through butter. But your reputation. Marcel lifted my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. My reputation is built on results, not office gossip. And as for us? He paused meaningfully. I don't hide what I care. Not ever. That night, Marcel invited us back to his penthouse for dinner. Toby was already playing with building blocks in the living room when Marcel led me out to the terrace. The city stretched out below us, thousands of lights twinkling in the darkness. We need to talk. His voice was serious, almost grave. My stomach dropped. This was it. The conversation where he realized this was too complicated, too messy, too public. Okay? About us. About what this actually is between us. I sat down on one of the terrace chairs, bracing myself for heartbreak. Marcel remained standing, hands in his pockets, looking out at the skyline. I know this is complicated, he began carefully. I'm your boss. You have a son. People will judge us. Some already are. The power dynamic alone could destroy both our careers, if we're not careful. He turned to face me and his expression was completely vulnerable. But Rex, I don't care about any of that. I care about you. And I care about Toby. This isn't some passing attraction for me. Tears pricked at my eyes unexpectedly. Marcel, I'm terrified, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. What if this doesn't work out? What if Toby gets attached to you and then you decide this is too much? I can handle getting my heart broken. I'm an adult, but he's just a baby. He can't handle losing someone else. Marcel dropped to his knees in front of my chair, placing his hands on my knees. The gesture was so unexpected, so humble that it took my breath away. Then we'll figure it out. Together. I'm not going anywhere, Rex. I promise you that. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against mine. I want this. I want you, I want Toby. I want morning pancakes and bedtime stories, and all the messy, complicated, wonderful things that come with being part of your life. He kissed me then, slow and sweet and full of unspoken promises. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with emotion. Be mine. Both of you. Officially. Let me prove to you that I'm here to stay. I never thought I'd see Kyle again. I'd made peace with that reality. He'd left us, signed away his rights, disappeared completely. But there he stood in the reception area of Cross Enterprises on a Wednesday afternoon, looking exactly the same as he had 3 years ago. Same messy brown hair that always needed cutting. Same careless smirk that had once made my heart race but now just made me feel cold. Rex. He said my name like no time had passed at all. Like he hadn't abandoned me when I was 6 months pregnant and terrified. Long time. We should talk about Toby. My blood turned to ice in my veins. You left, Kyle. You signed legal documents terminating your parental rights. You don't get to just walk back in now like nothing happened. I made a mistake. His face arranged itself into an expression that might have been regret, but felt rehearsed. I was 23 and scared. But I've grown up. I want to be his life now. I have rights as his biological father. You have no rights. My voice shook despite my best efforts to control it. You gave those up. At that exact moment, Marcel walked into the reception area. His eyes immediately found mine, then shifted to Kyle, and I watched his entire body language change. He read my tension, my fear, my defensive posture in seconds. Who's this? Marcel's voice dropped to that dangerously quiet tone I'd heard him use in hostile business negotiations. Kyle, Toby's biological father. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Marcel's transformation was instant and complete. He moved to my side, placed one hand possessively on my lower back, and fixed Kyle with a stare that could have frozen lava. Kyle sized Marcel up with obvious calculation. So you're the new daddy? Must be convenient playing house with my kid while I wasn't around to object. Your kid? Marcel's voice could have cut glass. Where were you when Rex was raising him alone? When he was working double shifts just to afford diapers and formula? When Toby spoke his first word, took his first step, had his first everything? You weren't there. You forfeited that right. Kyle's face flushed red with anger. I'm his biological father. DNA doesn't lie. And I'm taking legal action. I want joint custody. Courts favor biological parents. The world tilted sideways. Custody. The word echoed in my head like a death sentence. I'd raised Toby alone through every sleepless night, every fever, every milestone. And now this man who'd abandoned us wanted to take him away? Marcel's hand tightened on my back, anchoring me when I felt like I might collapse. You're not taking anything, he said, his voice carrying absolute certainty and veiled threat. I'll make sure of it. You'll need more than lawyers. You'll need a miracle. Kyle laughed, but it sounded forced. Your money doesn't scare me. Blood matters in court. A single father with a demanding job and a questionable relationship with his boss versus a stable two-parent household with my fiancé? I like my odds. He looked directly at me, deliberately twisting the knife. See you in court, Rex. Hope your boyfriend's checkbook is worth it. He left, and I stood there shaking, unable to process what had just happened. Marcel turned me toward him, his hands on my shoulders. Look at me. Rex. Look at me. Right now. I raised my eyes to his face, desperate for reassurance I wasn't sure he could give. He's not taking Toby. I won't allow it to happen. But what if the courts side with him? What if being the biological father is enough? What if— Stop. Marcel's voice was firm but gentle. I don't care what typically happens in custody cases. We'll hire the best family law attorneys in the state. We'll fight this with everything we have. And we'll win. His confidence should have been reassuring. But fear had already wrapped itself around my lungs, making it hard to breathe. That night, I completely broke down. We were back at Marcel's penthouse. It had become a second home over the past few weeks, and Toby was asleep in what had essentially become his room. Marcel found me on the bathroom floor, sobbing into my hands, trying to stay quiet so I wouldn't wake my son. Rex. He sank down beside me, pulling me against his chest. Talk to me. He can't take Toby. He can't. Toby doesn't even know him. How is it fair that someone can just show up after 3 years and demand custody? How is that legal? The words came out in broken gasps between sobs. Shh. Breathe for me, baby. Just breathe. Marcel pressed my face against his chest, one hand stroking my hair. I know you're scared, but listen to me carefully. Toby has been with you his entire life. You're his whole world. No judge with any sense will ignore that. But Kyle is his biological father. Doesn't biology trump everything else? No. Marcel's voice was absolutely firm. He tilted my face up, forcing me to look at him. Being a parent isn't about DNA. It's about showing up every single day. It's about midnight fevers and homework help and unconditional love. You've done all of that. Kyle abandoned you both when you needed him most. That matters more than any blood test. He kissed me then, not gentle this time, but fierce and desperate, pouring reassurance into it like he could transfer his certainty directly into my veins. Toby is yours, Rex, and you're mine. Nobody is taking either of you away from me. I promise you that with everything I am. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But fear had already taken root in my chest, a constant heavy weight that made every breath difficult. What if we lose? I whispered against his lips. We won't. He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. But if somehow we do, then we'll appeal. And we'll keep fighting until there are no more options. I'm not giving up on you or Toby. Not now. Not ever. The conviction in his voice should have comforted me. Instead, it just made me realize how much we both stood to lose. Kyle had come back, and the fight was only beginning. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Somehow I'd imagined something grand and imposing. But it was just a regular room with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that made everything look slightly sickly. Marcel sat beside me, his hand firmly gripping mine under the table where nobody could see. His presence was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. Kyle's lawyer was a sharp, expensive suit, practiced smile, and a talent for making me sound like the world's worst parent. She stood before the judge with complete confidence. Your Honor, let's examine the facts. Mr. Rex works excessive hours in a demanding corporate position. He frequently leaves his son at daycare for extended periods, sometimes until closing. He depends entirely on his employer, who also happens to be his romantic partner, for both financial and logistical support. She paused for effect. Is this truly the stable environment a child deserves? Or is this a father using his son to secure a relationship with a wealthy CEO? Each accusation felt like a physical blow. I'd done everything in my power to give Toby a good life, and now it was being twisted into evidence of neglect and manipulation. My grip on Marcel's hand tightened until my knuckles went white. Then Marcel's lawyer stood up. Victoria Chen was a legend in family law. Sharp as a scalpel and twice as deadly. She adjusted her glasses and fixed Kyle's lawyer with a look that could have melted steel. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is making inflammatory accusations without factual basis. Let's discuss actual facts instead of speculation. She turned her attention to Kyle, who suddenly looked less confident. Mr. Kyle abandoned Mr. Rex and their infant son 3 years ago. 0 phone calls, 0 financial support. 0 presence whatsoever. He has never met Toby, not once in 3 years. And now, conveniently after learning about Mr. Rex's relationship with a successful CEO, he suddenly wants custody. She let that hang in the air. This isn't about fatherhood, Your Honor. This is opportunism, pure and simple. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, turned her attention to Kyle. Mr. Kyle, I'd like to hear directly from you. Why now? Where exactly were you for 3 years? Kyle fumbled, clearly unprepared for direct questioning. I was young, Your Honor. Only 23 when he was born. I wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. I made mistakes, but I've changed. I'm engaged now, financially stable, ready to be a father. And Mr. Rex wasn't young? The judge's tone sharpened. He was the exact same age, yet he stayed. He raised that child completely alone. What makes you believe you deserve custody now? Kyle's lawyer jumped in quickly. Your Honor, biological bonds are significant. Mr. Kyle has rights as the biological father. Rights he legally terminated. Victoria interrupted smoothly. Which brings me to my next point. She pulled out a folder. Your Honor, Mr. Marcel Cross is willing to provide formal affidavits, complete financial records, and multiple character witnesses. He has been a stable, consistent, loving presence in Toby's life for several months. He has provided for both Mr. Rex and Toby not out of legal obligation, but genuine care and commitment. He wishes to support them long-term financially, emotionally, and if the court permits, through legal partnership recognition. The judge studied Marcel carefully. Mr. Cross, do you understand what you're committing to? You're willing to accept parental responsibility for a child who isn't biologically yours? Marcel stood, and I'd never seen him look more confident or more certain. His voice rang clear through the courtroom. Yes, Your Honor. Absolutely and completely. I love them both. Rex is the best father I've ever witnessed, and Toby deserves to remain with him. I'll do whatever necessary to ensure that happens. Tears blurred my vision. The courtroom went completely silent, everyone absorbing the weight of his declaration. The judge took a long moment, reviewing her notes. When she finally spoke, her voice was decisive. Custody remains with Mr. Rex. Full legal custody. Mr. Kyle, you may apply for supervised visitation, but only if Mr. Rex agrees. and only after you complete a mandatory parenting course and undergo psychological evaluation to assess your commitment and stability. Relief hit me so hard I almost collapsed right there. Marcel's arm came around me immediately, holding me upright, solid and reassuring. Outside the courthouse, Kyle gave me one final bitter look. You got lucky. This isn't finished. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt strong enough to respond. No, I didn't get lucky. I got someone who actually stays. Someone who actually cares. That's not luck. That's love. Marcel squeezed my hand, silent support and pride. We drove back to Marcel's penthouse, which had truly become our home over the past weeks. Toby was still at daycare, blissfully unaware that his entire future had been decided in a courtroom that morning. We'd pick him up soon, take him for ice cream, let him play at the park. Normal things that suddenly felt precious beyond measure. In the living room, Marcel pulled me down to sit on the couch, then surprised me by kneeling on the floor in front of me. My heart started racing for entirely different reasons. Rex. His voice was soft, full of emotion I'd never heard from him before. I meant every single word I said in that courtroom this morning. Every single word. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath caught in my throat. I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. We'll get there when you're ready. He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band, elegant and perfect. But I'm asking you to let me be part of your life. Officially. Permanently. Completely. No more hiding. No more uncertainty. I want everyone to know that you and Toby are mine. And I'm yours. He took the ring out and held it up. Say yes. Say you'll let me love you both for as long as you'll have me. Tears streamed down my face. Happy tears this time. Not the terrified ones from before. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Always yes. Marcel slid the ring onto my finger, then pulled me down into a kiss that felt like a promise, a future and a happy ending all wrapped into one perfect moment. I love you, he whispered against my lips. Both of you. My family. We love you too, I whispered back, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Our journey hadn't been easy. It had been complicated and messy and terrifying. But we were together now. We were a family. And that was everything.